Well, let's face it, this week couldn't have got much worse for the royals, as the heir to the throne will likely be questioned by police over an investigation into the cash for honours scandal. And of course, Prince Andrew's out-of-court settlement to Virginia Giuffre is the latest disgrace for the Queen's second son. Questions over the amount of money and who will be funding it have been on the lips of the nation ever since. Charlotte, let's start with you. The figure rumoured to be in the region of £10–12 million. This is, of course, an out-of-court settlement with Mrs Giuffre, who's accused him of raping her when she was 17. The Prince has always denied these claims. Have you been surprised by everything that's happened this week?
I've been surprised by the speed with which all of this has happened. I'm certainly surprised that it's happened now, not in March when it was going to go to deposition. And I'm really surprised Andrew didn't get his day in court. He was determined to get his day in court. And something must have happened very suddenly. And it feels like a surrender, but not a surrender to Virginia, but a surrender perhaps to some forces behind the scenes within the royal family, namely Charles and the Queen, who must have just said, we've got to get this sorted now.
So you think it's definitely pressure from family?
I think there's been some pressure behind the scenes and there's been a sudden change of tack and it's just happened so quickly. And yeah, so surprised, definitely.
And Guy, this, as Charlotte was saying, comes just a week after the Duke vowed to contest these claims in a public trial in the US. There's been a complete U-turn. And you've talked in articles for the paper about the fact that nothing in the Duke's statement clearly exonerates him.
Yeah, it's a very odd statement. Normally, you cover these kind of legal declarations. Normally, the chap writing the cheque will get to insert a clause in the statement saying something along the lines of, you know, he continues to profess his innocence, or there is no evidence, or da-da-da. There's not a single line like that in the statement that was released on Tuesday night. And that shows, I suppose, the sort of the really abject nature of the surrender. He's not only written a vast cheque, but he's also essentially not been allowed to insert any line that might make it look like he's done anything apart from wave a white flag.
And of course, you know, a substantial amount of money to Virginia Giuffre's charity. Some might say, you know, she will be pleased with that. She will feel vindicated. Others may say, you know, for true justice, perhaps the day in court would have been a sort of landmark case a lot of victims of sexual abuse would have wanted.
I think the court of opinion actually has gone towards Virginia. They haven't said he didn't. You settled and you should have had your day in court. I think people realise that she has been exonerated, and Andrew, it was a very contrite statement.
And also, I mean, from Andrew's point of view, you're right, it was a very contrite statement. There has been a sort of school of thought that a lot of royal pundits have been saying, you know, on the television and whatnot, yes, this is terrible, it looks bad, but actually from the royal family's point of view, it's the least worst the least worst step he could have taken. I completely disagree with that. I think this is a terrible, terrible step. I think if you are accused of a crime or a behaviour as terrible as Andrew was accused of, really the least worst step is to go to court and to win. And I'm amazed that he didn't. I think, look, you know, America isn't some sort of banana republic with a corrupt court system that doesn't work. It's a mature democracy with a very robust court system. If, as he claims, he never met this woman, or as he has claimed in the past, he never met this woman, this was all lies, then he should have been very confident to go to court, and he should have been very, very confident of victory. I'm baffled actually that he's declared this sort of this payoff's been announced so quickly.
I think that's why he wanted to go to court, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think he thought that deep. You know, he thought, if I get there, I can win this, and something must have happened to stop him in his tracks.
Do you think that how you say a lot of people will be feeling the same about this sort of complete U-turn? Do you agree with Charlotte that actually it was pressure from the family that sort of made him take this step?
I mean, who knows? I can see it's quite convenient. You could be seen as quite convenient to kind of clear the decks. The Queen's Jubilee is coming up in June. You don't want this to be, you certainly wouldn't want a court case to be happening at that very moment. My only sort of question is, does this really clear the decks? I'm not sure it does, because this stain will hang over the royal family forever, really. And you know, as long as we're debating who's actually paying this money, where it's come from, it will continue to be a news story, and that could carry on for quite a long time.
We will come back to that question about who is footing the bill for the payout from the Duke of York. Let's first, though, get some insight from Nigel Cawthorne. He's thought a lot about Prince Andrew's predicament, as he's the author of Prince Andrew, Epstein, Maxwell and the Palace. We wanted to get his view on what comes next for the Queen's favourite child.
Virginia Giuffre's settlement in no way exonerates Prince Andrew. That the match should proceed on two matters. One is that she accused him of rape in the first degree, which is a very serious offence, wherever it takes place in the world. And secondly, looking at that famous picture, now we have Ghislaine Maxwell, a convicted sex trafficker, have the 17-year-old Virginia Roberts, as she then was, who says she was trafficked. Prince Andrew said that he wasn't there. But if he knew that she would have been trafficked, then that's an offence under the 1956 Sexual Offences Act, which makes it illegal to traffic anyone for the purpose of sex under the age of 21. So the fact that she was over the age of consent in the UK is irrelevant. I hope that the new Commissioner of Metropolitan Police will take this matter very seriously. After all, the Met and other police forces in this country have promised to take, especially after the Sarah Everard case, have promised to take offences against women very seriously, and plainly Cressida Dick didn't. With the settlement of the Giuffre case, we won't really hear the answer to Virginia's accusation. But this is far from over. There was two outstanding perjury charges against Ghislaine Maxwell, which refer to the 2015 defamation case brought by Virginia Giuffre against Ghislaine Maxwell, which is where Prince Andrew's name first surfaced. So we'll hear from that again. And of course, the FBI still want to speak to Prince Andrew. Now that Ghislaine Maxwell has been convicted.
And if you'd like to read more of Nigel's thoughts on Prince Andrew, the paperback edition of Prince Andrew, Epstein, Maxwell and the Palace is out today. So going back to the payment, I mean, a huge amount of money. Who do we think, Charlotte, is going to be footing the bill for this?
Well, I think he sold his chalet. And I think he's raised funds. Apparently, there are some reports through a bridging loan involving Prince Charles. And then there's now a figure of 12 million reported. So there's this number of the £2 million, which some reports are saying has come from the Queen. But they've been very careful to say it's not going directly to Virginia, but to one of her charities, although the charity's in her name, because the Queen just cannot be seen to be paying directly for her son's mistake, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, so certainly in the newspapers this morning, the Palace is not denying that the Queen has been in some way involved in helping finance this settlement. I would say not denying is kind of an affirmation. I think if she wasn't involved, they would have been they would have been very sort of upfront about that. So, and then it's not a great look.
It's not a great look, and I think that the public also are questioning, is any of this going to come from taxpayer-funded money?
It sounds like it's going to come from the Duchy of Lancaster, which is about 577 million quid's worth of assets that she has. And she does voluntarily pay tax on those assets, even though she doesn't have to. So I think she's got away with that one, just about. But it does raise the question of, well, the assets are huge amounts of land in London and across the country that she owns, that she inherited from her predecessors. So, it does raise a big anti-monarchist question.
Definitely. I mean, either way, just her being involved in this at all it leaves a bit of a bad taste.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and also, there's also questions about how Prince Andrew's financing this. How much money does he have? Where does his money come from? His finances have always been opaque, and they remain opaque. And it remains very difficult to see what he's now going to live off for the rest of his days, and whether he's going to ever be able to have the lifestyle that he's grown accustomed to.
And I mean, surely there is absolutely no way back for him now to public life. But what's next for him? Richard Eden, who is of course away this week, pointed out on Twitter that Andrew remains a counsellor of state for the Queen, meaning that if she were ill, he would deputise for her. surely there'll be considerations about that now.
Yeah, somebody was saying that, so there's Prince Harry, Prince Charles, the Duke of York. Who's the fourth one? Does anybody know?
Prince William, isn't it?
And Prince William. And what with the COVID scare last week, what with Harry being in LA, there is actually a scenario in which the Queen may, in which Prince Andrew may have to step up to the plate for the Queen. So that will surely have to go because, I mean, imagine such a scenario. It actually is possible in these strange COVID times. It'd be very embarrassing.
Absolutely. And what about titles like the Duke of York, of course, all the Jubilee celebrations? I mean, the timing really couldn't be worse.
Yeah, and there's the other, I mean, obviously the other sort of question here is this it in this case? Does this wrap it all up for Prince Andrew? Is this the end of his legal woes, or is there more to come? Is someone else going to file a lawsuit against him? Are the police going to sort of start sniffing around? What about the FBI's investigation? What about Ghislaine, who's in prison in the US, but she's still never spoken, really? She's never given evidence. Maybe she will. So, I mean, it could get worse.
He's going to have a very strange quality of life as well. He's literally going to be living in the shadows. He's going to go to his father's memorial, and that'll be it. That'll be the last time. He'll probably play some golf with what few friends he has left. He's certainly not going to be skiing in Verbier anymore. And this is a man who thrives on wealth and power and status. That's what he lives for. And all of that's been taken away from him. So it's going to be a very strange existence for him now, I think.
Absolutely. And what about for his, his immediate family, his two daughters? They've recently got married. They recently have children. And, Andrew's daughter Eugenie has been involved. She founded an anti-trafficking and slavery charity. It's all a bit messy.
Yeah, it's not a good look for them.
Doesn't he now focus on being a granddad? I mean, and having a sort of a role in his grandchildren's... I mean, that is the one thing he can still kind of do that nobody would begrudge him, I don't think.
Yeah, he can probably do that. It's not a huge role being a grandfather. They've both got all the nannies. The kids are going to school. I mean, he's not going to be a nanny for his grandchildren, but I'm sure he'll be very hands-on. He remains really close with Beatrice and with Eugenie too. But Beatrice is particularly devoted to him at this time. And I think that was evidenced by the fact that Eugenie was in America this week. It was before this actually was all released. But she's got one foot in the real world, some people say.
And what about Fergie?
Fergie has been working her socks off behind the scenes to keep everything calm and tranquil within her own family, because it's been unbelievably strenuous, obviously, for Andrew, who truly believes he should have kept his honorary titles. And, I gather, flies into emotional moments, as you probably would if you were under this much pressure. And she's trying to keep the family together. That is her main purpose. And to keep her daughters happy. I mean, it's really upsetting for her daughters. And she wants to keep everyone unified, but under such a strenuous situation.
Yeah, huge amount of pressure. Social media, of course, has been having a bit of a field day about all this. In particular, we've got this photo saying that the queues are forming after Prince Andrew agrees to give huge sums of money away to people he's never met. I mean, this kind of thing rife on social media. How much does this risk damaging the reputation of the royals?
Well, to the man on the street's having a really good laugh at the moment. Some people are still, a lot of people are quite angry about this. So, the question is, are they still going to be angry in a month, or will they have moved on to the next thing? And that's kind of the nature of social media. Maybe next week they'll be moaning about, I don't know, Boris Johnson throwing parties or something. So I wouldn't be too concerned about some ugly memes. There'll be different ones. Different ones in a few days.
Of course,
it's
bound
very
to happen. Unfortunate
that the grand old Duke of York has a certain ring to it. It's very memeable, that song, isn't it?
Absolutely.
He suffered a bit from that, I think.
We have that one as well.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that sums it up so well, doesn't it? It really
Duke
does.
of York, he borrowed 12 million quid. He gave it to someone he'd never met for something he never did.
I'll sing that to my daughters when I next do nursery rhyme time.
Bedtime lullaby. Charlotte, how do you feel like this undermines the family's reputation?
Well, it just sums it all up, doesn't it? Why would you give 12 million quid to somebody you've never met if you were totally innocent? That is the feeling, I think, in the court of public opinion, and that sums that up really well. I think you might disagree.
No, I think that is true. Is it going to be something that people wake up angry about in a few weeks' time? I don't really know. It's on people's minds at the moment.